Hello everybody and welcome to this Rhino video tutorial. I am Vanessa Stegg. In today's tutorial, I would like to do an introduction to environments in Rhino 6. To get started, let's go over to the perspective viewport and set it to rendered mode. This will make the environment and whichever changes we make to it visible. There are many places where we can control environments in Rhino 6. For the purposes of this tutorial, let's focus on the rendering panel. If you don't see it on your Rhino interface, go over to the panels menu and select it from the list. You'll notice that the rendering panel contains most of the settings necessary to configure your rendering. We will focus on the backdrop and lighting sections. An environment is commonly referred to as the background and ground plane that decor the scene. It also plays a role in lighting and reflections. Let's start with the background. By default, rendered mode sets the background color to a solid white. If I click in the color box, I can access the color wheel and change this to any other color of my preference. Let's cancel out of here. We can also set it to gradient. Gradient blends two colors together, and we can, of course, control each one of these independently. You may have noticed that the scene is filled with the backdrop information, although the ground plane is checked. We see a reference of it because shadows are being casted on it. Actually, if I deactivate it, the scene becomes unrealistic and the 3D model seems like it's floating in space. Let's check this back on and access the ground plane settings. Here we can control whether the ground plane is on, set a specific height in Z, or leave it to automatic, which means that the ground plane level will be determined by the object furthest below in Z. It is also where we control whether the ground plane is transparent and receives shadows only, or uses a material. Let's check out this option. I can now select a material in the 3DM file, or choose to import one from the material library. For instance, the material is now applied to the infinite ground plane and scaled appropriately in the file units. We could also select a preset, such as paint. Paint is a highly reflective material and allows us to create this mirroring effect on the ground plane. For now, let's cancel out of these options and check out the Wallpaper background. Wallpaper is controlled over on the Properties panel, under Wallpaper. If I click on the three-dotted icon, I can access any image on my computer. This will set the image as a flat background in the viewport. Wallpaper, along with a transparent ground plane, is a quick way of setting an environment, and probably the option we would most often recommend. Keep in mind that the image is flat and will not change as I rotate the model around. Let's deactivate this and go back to the rendering panel. The fourth option is to use a 360-degree environment. This is a dome that surrounds a scene and usually contains an HDR image mapped onto it. By default, Rhino uses the Studio environment. The Studio HDR is composed of a soft gradient of grays and these two large white panels that are reflected onto our shiny materials. All these details help us understand the material properties and the object's shape. See, if I set this to No Environment and deactivate Use Custom Environment for Reflections, our reflective objects look flat. Let's go back into the environment list and click on the plus sign to access the environment library. This folder contains a list of pre-existing environments, RENV files, Rhino environment files. Each one of these configured with different settings and HDR images. Let's select a few. By the way, hold down the Control key while clicking on the different files. This will ensure multiple selection. Now, by clicking in the drop-down list, we can try our different environments. You'll notice that the environments contain an HDR image of a specific location and become visible in the background. That being said, they are of low resolution and are best used for lighting and reflections only. These more intricate images bring out details and information that would have gone otherwise unseen. Let's set this back to Studio and check this option back on again. Use Custom Environment for Reflections. This allows us to set a different environment that is only projected onto the shiny reflective materials, giving us more control over how our scene comes together. Let's now go to the lighting section and focus on skylighting. The skylight is a dome of lights that projects rays into the scene. It is the option responsible for creating all the soft lighting and shadows that we see. If I select to use a custom environment for skylighting, I can now set a third environment. This means that the skylight will now use the light and color information from the HDR image to light the scene, allowing us to set different ambiances and lighting schemes in our model. If you want to learn more about HDR environments, keep tuned for our next tutorial. Thank you for watching!